everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Lollygaggers Dynasty Recap. Welcome to what will be, I would imagine, the first of an annual proposed changes pod. Of course, I am your host and your league commish, Zang, and I am here to talk over the Google form that hopefully you are looking at right now that sort of outlines the changes for this upcoming year. Obviously, I'm planning to kind of say this in text as well when I kind of send it out, but please do just make sure you're taking your time with this. Obviously, this is a league we have all had a ton of fun with, and I think want to continue to have a lot of fun with. And I've mentioned this little anecdote before, but when I first started this, I kind of reached out in some forums and some stuff like that to, other Dynasty league managers or commissioners, and the number one tip they gave to me was be ready to change the rules. And so that's kind of what we're doing here. We have obviously this list of proposed changes for the upcoming year. Some of them are kind of vanity or little league things. Some of them are, pretty impactful towards the actual gameplay itself. So given, I think, the gravity, particularly some of the things in the second and third categories that you'll hear in a moment, the gravity that they can have just in terms of, how our league plays and everything, I thought it was best to kind of talk things over and just break everything down so everyone's on the same page. So what I've recommended, I will recommend this via text as well, so I'm sure you've probably read this already, but go ahead and pull up that spreadsheet right now, or pardon me, not that spreadsheet, that Google form, and if you want, just kind of answer it along with this as you do it, just so you have the kind of best perspective on what we're looking at. So our Google form is broken up into three sections. There's the general league section, which just sort of covers, like it says, general league stuff that's in the league there. Section number 2 is scoring. So these are things that specifically affect the way points are accumulated, or the way points are accumulated, basically. And then section number 3 is rosters. And so that affects anything to do with what players you can have on your roster, how many players you can have on your roster, et cetera, et cetera. So we will get started off with our first section, General League. Thought I'd add in a little transition. Why not? It's kind of fun. So we'll start off with Section 1, General League. And the first one, to me, is something I would personally be super psyched about. This is the introduction of team names and locations. So obviously, how much will this affect the real gameplay? Not so much. But given that we do a podcast, I think it would actually be a lot of fun to introduce team names and team locations for all of our teams in the league. Kind of knowing everyone's team a little bit better, I think it makes things easier too, just in knowing who is who. And this is something I didn't realize, particularly for Dynasty, is very, very common. People pick a location and a team name. Obviously, we would say, don't just pick don't make your team the Pittsburgh Pirates or even another league. Don't make your team the I'm trying to think of a St. Louis Rams, who aren't there anymore, but let's say LA Rams. You get the idea. So, we wouldn't pick a real team, obviously, but you could pick maybe an area you're from, maybe just something that is fun, just something to kind of add a little bit of identity to your team. With my little bit of graphic design experience, I would even be willing to sort of help people kind of create logos and stuff like that for their team to implement. That could even be something we do in a second year there. Have you thought about kind of the programming stuff for this? I do think it would be pretty fun. If this motion does pass, I'm going to ask people to submit it. Again, I'll send out another Google form, and it'll be kind of a grand reveal on an upcoming pod of everyone's team name and location. So that is just something that I think could be a lot of fun. And I do have to say, particularly as the person who does the recaps, being able to mention somebody's name or their location or their team name or all three, I think would just make it all a lot more fun. And maybe role-playing isn't quite the right word, but we're all pretty into the, diving deep on all this. So I think that's a fun way to just add another element, and something that a lot of other Dynasty leagues is pretty common, which I didn't realize. Number 2 has to do with the trade deadline. So just talking about moving it up a week earlier than it was last year. I know we had a few people, myself included, who felt like the trade deadline came around and then the kind of playoff push just got right on top of you and there wasn't quite enough. I figured it was best to start with a week. If, again, this time next year, we're like, oh man, again, like I still didn't have enough time with my, new acquisitions. I think especially given how robust the trade deadline was this past year in terms of trades, it makes a lot of sense, but I also think it makes sense to move 1 week at a time. So I was digging through. I couldn't find the specific week, but if you do kind of remember back where we were, it would just be 1 week earlier than it was last year. Our next motion is for a yearly buy-in. So those of you who are in the football group obviously are familiar with this. This is obviously a pretty common thing in fantasy. With our group of 12, it would likely be on the lower side, between $15 and $20 a year. And just a little note on this motion, if it does pass, we will decide probably by Discord poll or something, to A, how much the buy-in is, and B, how it's distributed. If it's, 80% to the champion, 20% to the runner-up, or blah, blah, you kind of understand what I'm saying. So do we want to introduce a buy-in? And again, it would be a yearly buy-in, and just from a logistical standpoint, that would, of course, be on top of the premium league fees, which, by the way, if everyone, when you have a moment, it is $10.83. If you could go in and pay your league fees, shout out to Serial Chiller, Mike, and Al Martinet, who are the 3 league members who have already paid their dues. So shouts out, thanks for doing that, guys. If you just pop onto Fantrax, you'll see it there. Just to pay your dues, and all that does, just as a reminder, is it lets us have more options in terms of minor league stuff and some other roster construction things, some stuff that we've definitely wanted in our league. And so it's, $10 a year. We all chip in a little bit, and it kind of makes us a premium league, which is, in my opinion, totally worth it. Yearly buy-in. So, I probably figure $20 and let's just say it's $20, and it goes all, to the winner, then the winner, they come out with, I was trying to do a math, but I pumped the wrong thing. They come out with $400. So, just a little bit of extra stakes along with, our already existent, bragging rights and other potential things that may have been discussed, in the past there. So that is the yearly buy-in. Moving on to the next one. This is a pretty big topic, expansion. So this is sort of a 2-part motion. Are we going to expand? And if we do, how many teams would we expand to? Just some baseline stuff. If the league were to expand, there would be an expansion draft. And depending on how familiar you are with, like real life teams, real life league, expansion drafts. This would look something kind of like that, where there would be different designations of players, designations basically around positions they play, and in our case, probably like total points scored or age, just some different things. So, you'd have to put up one guy who tallied at least 400 points and 2 guys who are under the age of 25. These are totally arbitrary numbers, but you get the idea. Some different categories, and then obviously the team or teams that are expanding would kind of select from that pool. So everybody you put up obviously wouldn't be drafted into the expansion team, but some of your people were. To speak candidly, it did feel like there was something missing this year. Min has been a very present member of our fantasy baseball time since really the first Lollygaggers League. And there was a part of me that was just thinking, man, it would be really cool to have him part of this league. I should say this. I have not spoken to him. I have not spoken to any of the other candidates I'm going to mention in a moment. I figured it was best for us to vote first and then kind of figure out, okay, are these people interested? Rather than to ask them and have them kind of get excited and then potentially have the motion not pass. So, are we interested in expansion? And then, of course, the next question is how many teams to expand to? I did just put two options up there, 13 and 14. So that would be one additional team and two additional teams, respectively. The one additional team would basically put it into place where once every 12 weeks, you would have a quote-unquote bye week. It's an interesting idea. It kind of mixes things up. It's a thought. And, as we are expanding, and thinking about the expansion draft, it is just, you'd be putting less players up. 14, of course, expanding two teams to 14, would keep everything even, and there would be 7 matchups a week instead of 6. The other two names I did just want to throw out there in terms of expansion are Sammy Bell, who, and again, I have not spoken to any of these people. I don't know if they're interested, but he does play in the Dynasty Football League and has played fantasy baseball with us in the past. And KJ Lee, who has played fantasy football in our Dynasty League again this year, so clearly is familiar with the Dynasty format, and seems to be a solid baseball guy and is on the newer end of the server, obviously. So, somebody who hasn't played a lot of fantasy baseball with us just yet, but somebody who could potentially be interested. So, obviously, this is a pretty big question. Potentially expanding to another team, but it's something I think that is worthwhile. If this is a pretty overwhelming majority, I do think that, hey, we should take that to be the case. That does bring me to a point I wanted to mention. Obviously, there are 12 of us voting. If it comes down to a straight up tie, I kind of just want to bring it to a forum and talk about it in the Discord more. I don't really want there to be just a straight up tiebreaker, especially because there are only 12 of us. And I think we can kind of talk these things out. So otherwise, these are majority rules. So if it is a 7-5, that will be the way that this is decided. So just keep that in mind. Obviously meant to say that right off the top, but I did not get a chance to. So that is the general league section. Let's move on now to scoring. So section number 2, scoring. There are only 2 sections in here, but one of them is more robust than it looks. Our first motion here is, should we adjust scoring point values for the 2026 season? Your 2 options, of course, are yes, change the point values, or no, keep as is. This would be discussed in the Discord, were this motion to pass, I should say. And this could include things like, I know we have had some concerns about the harshness of a penalty for a batter strikeout. It is currently at minus 1.2 right now, which feels like a lot. And just a general rebalancing. I think we all felt it this year, that although in general pitchers are more valuable, it was too much this year. And as we have, dove deeper into this system, this is obviously the same system we've used the last 2 years in redraft fantasy baseball, it just needs to be tinkered around with a little bit. I will say I fully expect this motion to pass, and we will discuss it. There are a lot of options at play. I tinker around on ESPN, where it's pretty easy to put side-by-sides between new and old point values. So we could tinker with a few things in essentially working to make pitchers and batters equal, to keep pitchers a little bit more valuable, but bring some more value to batters. Even looking at things like more volatility in pitchers and more consistency in batters, if we kind of want to go down that route. And then the other option, and part of me is a little bit interested in this, I have to say, is to just go with straight up fantasy values. There are some very standard boilerplate fantasy values. And part of me does wonder, hey, do we just kind of pivot to that? So should this motion pass, obviously we will talk about all that stuff, but those are just some primers. So I have to say I very much expect this one to pass. I think we all definitely felt the strikeouts thing, and just the general pitcher overvaluing in terms of all that. So should this motion pass as I expect, we will obviously talk about that in the Discord, and through some voting in there, kind of figure out what our new point values will look like. The next one in the scoring section was brought up a few times, encouraging a few people mentioned that they wanted to move to 12 starts per week for starting pitchers rather than just 10. And I think just the thought that you can work in a couple more starting pitchers, there are less guys that you have to sit, to budget your start limits. Speaking candidly, I will share my opinion, I guess, because I don't know. It's worth sharing. I am actually a big fan of 10 starts per week. I think it's a nice balance of a little bit of strategy in who you're starting and some foresight required. But also, you get enough of your guys in. On top of that, obviously, talking about how sort of quote-unquote overvalued pitchers are already, adding 2 more starts on that just kind of exacerbates that. However, this is... I could be totally fine with 12 starts, obviously, and I think a lot of us would feel fine with 12 starts. There would definitely still be some of those start-sit decisions in terms of budgeting your starts. It just might be less frequently that you need to kind of plan out your starts ahead of the week. So those are our only 2 motions in the scoring section. So we will move on to section number 3. So section number 3 is rosters, and we will talk over this a little bit. And yeah, I think I will. No, you know what? Yeah, okay. Sorry, I'm planning on the fly. Let's start by talking about player acquisition. So, our first motion is one of these kind of 2-part ones where there is a motion, and then sort of a caveat if it passes. A qualifier for that. So the motion is to move to an all waivers system with no direct ads from free agency, which sounds dramatic at first, but I think that it lends well to the dynasty format, which is much more based around long-term sort of a long-term site rather than short-term. And so what this would mean is players are not added just like with the green add button, but rather every player would be on waivers. You'd put in a claim for a waiver, a player that you want, and dependent on waiver priority. Obviously that would, waiver priority would be switching up a lot as when you win a waiver claim, you go to the bottom of the queue. So that's another thing. We kind of keep that moving. And then, of course, we need to ask how frequently would waivers process. And the 2 options are Monday, which is the start of each matchup. So obviously when we go up against each other, or Monday and Thursday. So twice a week, sort of at the start of each series. Personally, I am a fan of this. I do think that it curbs a little bit of the, we had some strife regarding the sort of Sunday glitch rule, and people adding players specifically to exploit that. And I think either one of these systems kind of mitigates that a little bit, which is, in my opinion, a good thing. It, I think, makes the transactions log a little bit more interesting to look at, where who's getting picked up on waivers, and I do think that it just it fits better for a dynasty format. Redraft I think makes a lot of sense where you're picking up guys and dropping them pretty frequently, but in a dynasty format, the idea of it is that these guys are your guys, and yes, you're dropping people and picking up new people as you kind of need to fill roster holes, or maybe a guy's not doing what you're expecting, but it's not as much of a just like drop him, grab the new guy sort of situation. So I do think that it kind of fits into the dynasty format nicely. So personally, this is something I'm a big fan of, and were I to select my thoughts on it. Monday and Thursday feels like a really nice balance. That is 2 add periods per week. So, God forbid you only have 1 second baseman on your roster, and he goes down on Monday with an injury. Well, you can have a new one by Thursday. And, yes, you are down a little bit. And I guess another area I'm thinking about that with is it does encourage roster flexibility, having guys that can cover different positions on your bench and all of that stuff. So just kind of as I'm thinking about all of that, I think that all of those things really fit nicely in the Dynasty format. So that is sort of the thought in terms of moving to an all waivers system, and then, of course, how frequently those would process. So before we move on to kind of the next group, which involve minor leaguers, I do want to share a bit of news that there is one change I am just sort of executive ordering as to a change. So last season, you all will remember, we didn't have any rules about how many minor leaguers you needed to have until about midway through the year, when going through recaps, I kind of realized, some people have really, really full benches. Come to realize in some discussion that Fantrax doesn't have a way of differentiating roster spots. So as things are currently listed, we have 22 active players. So that is starters for pitchers and batters, and then also your bench spots, and 10 minor league spots. And I don't understand why this is the case, but Fantrax pulls those into 32 total spots. So there were some people with 10 minor leaguers and 22 active players. There were also some people with 1 minor leaguer and 31 active players, which is obviously a competitive advantage, and in my opinion, not to the spirit of the Dynasty format. So starting next year, that will be, So how we fixed it, you were required to have a minimum of 10 minor leaguers at all time. That was, from all the talking I had, the only way around it. It was the only way to make sure. And so we made that the rule. You had to have 10 minor leaguers. There was that whole stupid system where you had to drop a person to pick up another minor leaguer to switch that minor leaguer out with the guy you want to promote. It was ridiculous. And we are going to be doing away with that this coming year. There will be no minimum limit on minor leaguers. However, there is a limit on active players, and that limit is 22. I don't have it turned on yet, but I have an alarm set to my phone for about half an hour after work every day. And every day, about half an hour after work, I will go on and take a quick peek at everyone's roster. And if your number of active players is above 23, I'll invalidate your lineup for the day. So that means you won't accumulate any points for the day. I think it's a bit of a trade-off to get rid of kind of that awful system and annoying stuff where you needed to have 10. There do need to be pretty strict guidelines, because I think through, no malintention, people were gaining a pretty significant competitive advantage having benches that big. So I'll do the quick check, after rosters lock daily. And if you are over that number, it will just be for that day, not for the week or anything, but for that day, I will invalidate your lineup. And that'll just mean you don't accumulate points there. So individually, we are all responsible for monitoring this for ourselves. There will be times when it says you can add somebody to your roster, and you just need to double check that is not going over your active 22 players. Whether that means you need to put guys on injured reserve, put them into your minors or whatever. And excuse me, I've been saying 22 this whole time. 22 is our total active, and then on top of that, there's 6 reserve players. So if either one, oh my God, holy cow. This whole thing's been wrong. If that 6 number, if that is over 6, so that would be players on your bench. Obviously you can't have over 22 active. Somebody's been screaming at their podcast app this whole time saying, "No, Zang, it's not that. No. It is over that 6. And I will reiterate this again near the beginning of the season. Obviously, That'll be the case. Moving on, that is the case for minor leaguers, so there's no longer that you have to have 10. Let's talk a little bit about some minor leaguer rules. So the first one is one we have all talked about, one that I think we all feel pretty confident in passing, and that is changing when promoted minor leaguers make a roster illegal. So if you'll remember this past season, if you had a player that was promoted from the minors in real life, you had 3 days to take them off of your minors roster and put them onto your active roster. And if you did not do that, your lineup would become invalid. It would become illegal, meaning your points are voided for that day. JMC, I think, really put it best where he said, everybody isn't Paul Skeens. And everybody is not coming up and immediately lighting the world on fire or immediately, being a starter even. Maybe they need a little time to adjust. So the proposed sort of length that I have is 45 days after being promoted. So I did poke around. There's no way to do it when they exceed rookie eligibility, but 45 active days on a roster is rookie eligibility. So it's kind of working around that. The one little caveat is, say a guy comes up, he's up for 10, 15 days and then goes back down. When he is recalled, that would be 45 days again from then. I don't personally have a problem with that. It still feels that's like enough time to, get a sense if a guy's acclimating well, keep him in the minors, keep an eye on his points, and all of that. So that is a rule. I as soon as, that was sort of brought up, I think a lot of people really agreed with that one, so I certainly expect that one. And yeah, JMC, thank you again for that really good kind of analogy there, because it's absolutely true. These guys need a little time to cook before they're really active, and there were too many people making, I think, challenging roster cut decisions where, oh my God, do I cut this prospect? He's a top 50 guy, but he's not really helping me right now. I'm trying to win a championship, so this would kind of get around that. With, of course, that minimum minor leaguer rule removed, I personally would love to increase the available spots from 10 to 15. And this is, I think, just for for a couple reasons. Some of us are pretty big prospect heads, and there are, in my opinion, a lot of guys still out there on in the minors free agent that I'm like, man, some of those guys should really be on rosters. The second thing, I think it will make trading continuously more interesting as you can trade. It's, in my opinion, hard to make a trade for a Caleb Durbin type. He is probably not, maybe that's not actually a great example, because he's projected pretty high. I don't know. You know the type I'm talking about. A semi-everyday player who is valuable on a fantasy roster. Maybe a guy you could find on the waiver wire, but hey, you really like this guy. And so you could trade a not top 100 prospect for him. And just in that way that every trade doesn't need to be every trade involving prospects, doesn't need to be a blockbuster, because there are some of those, lower end guys. And again, that's 5 among all the teams. And, we're talking about 60-ish more guys that have roster spots. So in my opinion, that is a good thing. And of course, with the minor leaguers minimum rule removed, if you only know 7 guys and you really only want 7 guys, that's fine. You only need 7 guys. But for some of us who are a little bit deeper into the prospects hole, and this could definitely make things more fun. The last thing I will say is it does make things much easier for this upcoming draft. And obviously this won't help next year, so this is a bit of a short-term solution. But there are 3 rounds of drafts. You'll pick 3 players, obviously, and there will be space for those 3 players. So that is just sort of an option on the minor leaguers, increasing it from 10 to 15. Just 2 more motions we want to talk about. The first one is adding additional IL spots. This is always something that kind of comes up. And we are really trying to, keep it to off-season changes. But I think the deeper we get into the league, Water's going to kind of find it. We're going to find Water's level in terms of how much we need for IL spots. And I think most of us felt like we did not have enough last year. If you're making significant roster cuts to get guys on IL. I think that is not enough, again, especially in a dynasty format where, if you had your Joe Musgroves who were out for all of last year, you can just drop them in a redraft league. Well, you can't do that here because they're going to be back next year. So, in my opinion, it does need to be a little bit more robust. It is currently at 8 as of right now, so adding additional spots. This is one I'd like to talk about in the Discord. My initial thought would just be 10, bump it up by 2. But should this one pass, it will go to a Discord vote. And this is what I get for not reading ahead on my spreadsheet. I did make this sheet a little bit earlier. And the next motion is how many spots would be added. That's right. We won't talk about it on Discord. It'll be about how many spots are added. The options are 1, 2, and 4. So 9 total, 10 total, or 12 total. So we can move up by just 1, move up by kind of a standard number of 2, or, really jump things up and go to 12 total. I would not expect the number to move beyond 12. So if you want to think about it, you could kind of say, hey, 10 is a, wade into the water to about waist deep and see how it feels. 12 is kind of just dive head in and we're all the way there. So that is just about everything. Genuinely, thank you. If you have made it to this point, for taking the time to just consider these decisions carefully enough. I appreciate you listening to my rambling here. I hope I didn't get too off topic with things. I really care about this league, and I know you all do too. And so just taking our time and making these decisions right, so the league is kind of the best fit for everyone involved in it, is I think the very best thing that we can do. I am itching and scratching. I've already sent out 3 of you have already gotten trade requests from me. I cannot wait to get back into business, and just thinking about it, We're approaching December, and soon the days are going to only start getting warmer, and I'm going to only start recording more podcasts a week. So I'm feeling very good there, very excited. Thank you all again for taking the time. I do appreciate you just moving quickly with these votes, and kind of as you listen to this, I hope you were kind of able to vote, because the sooner we do that, and should some of these things go through, the sooner we can talk them over and get these changes in place, and maybe even start getting some trades going and stuff. So thank you again. Have a wonderful night. We'll talk to you soon.
You know what that makes you, Larry?
Lollygaggers.
Lollygaggers.